Okay, welcome everyone. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to join. And in the meantime, hi Denise. In the meantime, we are so excited that today is the launch of our ebook. We're going to be getting you all a copy. We're going to be talking through some of the tips. But today is primarily about setting intentions and looking at our digital habits as it relates to work and mental health so that we can help all of you to optimize as much as possible as we enter 2021. And so you will see that we have a few different options for communication today. We have our chat for you to just pass along quick notes. We will ask that you all use the Q&A, which is down at the bottom panel towards the right. So if you have any questions along the way, we're going to address them at the end. And so please feel free to utilize all of these tools. We want to get to know everybody who is on this call. I know we're going to have some latecomers as well. And so if anybody does need to hop off early, don't worry, this will be recorded and we're going to send you all an email afterwards with the recording and the ebook. So I see some familiar faces already. We have Teodora, we have Sherry, we have Denise, some amazing members of the Digital Wellness Collective, the Digital Wellness Trade Association. And looking at the time, we'll just wait one more minute. So in the meantime, if you all want to type one word into the chat that describes how you're feeling about 2021, we would love to hear from you. Hopeful, excited, ready. Wonderful. There's some great words. Cautiously excited. Yes, I share cautious optimism in many cases. More resilient, happy. Year of new opportunities. Ready, excited. Oh, I love seeing some new names in here. Super excited. Amping up all that joy. Okay, ready for change. So thank you all for coming today. I'm going to dive in now. So my name is Nina Hersher. I'm CEO of the Digital Wellness Collective and co-founder of the Digital Wellness Institute, as is Amy. We co-founded the Digital Wellness Institute almost a year ago, and it's been an absolutely incredible journey. And so something that we created for everyone is this incredible ebook. We're going to talk about those details later, but it is essentially a 40-page guide to how to optimize remote work for yourself and for teams, because we know it can be immensely challenging with all the distractions, being in home, all of the dings and the pings. So we want to give you concrete tools and strategies for you to embody and for you to bring to your teams and your employers.
So I'm going to kick us off now with one quick question for you, and that is, when you see these images on the screen, what words come to mind for you? And if you don't mind just typing them into the chat box, what words come to mind when you see these images? See a couple things coming in: sad, distraction, more sadness, yeah, disconnection, lonely. Yeah, I'll show you another image here as we're typing. This photography comes from Eric Pickersgill, who created a photography exhibit called Removed, where he literally asked these actors to pose in the same things they normally do with their phones on a daily basis. This one is both sad and humorous at the same time. Missed opportunities, I see hiding, disconnect, isolation. When I've showed these images before, sometimes I get the response, hey, that's my family. That's what we look like. Maybe, just maybe though, this is what 2020 looked like. And in 2021, my vision is that maybe we begin to see a different picture of what digital wellness looks like for the world. We know that if 2020 was the year of the screen, perhaps 2021 is a year of digital flourishing, where finally people are recognizing that digital habits are no longer something that is a nice to have, but something that is absolutely essential to our overall health, our well-being, our vitality, our productivity. Just to give you a sense from the research that we did in pulling together this ebook, we'd uncovered uncovered that since February of this year, there's been a 300% increase in individuals searching on Google for how to get your brain to focus, which is ironic because I think it's a distraction to search for it, of course. But it's also a cry for help. It's a signal that it's time that we start giving intention to our attention because we crave it. We just don't know how to get there. And if you're feeling like this, you are absolutely not alone. I know many of you who are on this call today have been a part of either the Digital Wellness Collective or the Digital Wellness Institute, and you're well versed in some of the strategies for how to begin to create positive change in your culture around you. But if you haven't yet gotten an opportunity to delve in, today what we're going to do is cover some of these topics, so some little micro strategies that you can use to begin to create change both for individuals and for organizations. Because one of the things that we've learned is that the confluence of Zoom fatigue, this feeling of just ennui and tiredness and irritability that comes from spending too long on Zoom, which is ironic since we're on Zoom, but that combined with this continuous partial attention where we're switching between different tasks, different screens, different distractions, and a sense of constant connectivity, feeling like whatever time zone you're in, you always have to be available. You're checking your phone at night, you're checking it in the morning, you're checking it at lunchtime, you're checking it at dinner. That all combined leads to a decreased sense of engagement, and it's something that we feel keenly. Another thing that in my research as a positive psychologist that we've uncovered is that people often continue to use this phrase of, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when 2020 ends. I'll be happy when this project ends. I'll be happy when the election season ends. I'll be happy when ... And all of these things, we continue to kind of push our happiness and our sense of fulfillment and moment off into some other cognitive horizon. And so our brains never get to that feeling of really being content and at peace and getting to that sense of living in the present that we're always searching for. But I think we're at this really special, unique inflection point in history where we have the opportunity to change. We have the ability to shape how the future looks with the conversations we have right now. And in fact, we wanted to do this webinar today on the launch of our ebook, but also at the beginning of the new year, because it's an absolute moment in time, both within the pandemic, within what's going on with the new year, but also what's happening in the world of digital wellness and digital well-being, how there's a global awakening to the sense that this is something we absolutely need to address. So I'm going to turn it back over to Nina to share with you some of the things that we learned in writing our ebook this year. Oh, Nina, I think you're on mute still.
There we go. Thank you, Amy. And so there are 4 market trends that we feel that you should really know about. And so the first of these market trends is, let's just get on to the next slide. Here we go. Is that there is a serious skills shortage. And so when we're talking about a skills shortage, we're really referring to lack of education in terms of what we've needed to do this past year to really adapt. And so 48% of employees are new to this concept of remote work. 76% have received no training whatsoever on how to work from home, and 77% said employers should be providing some kind of guidance around working from home. And so we're seeing that people are looking for these skills. And to that end, there is this wellness crisis that's looming, especially if it goes unaddressed. And so 50% of folks reported new aches and pains since the lockdown. We're not as mobile as we usually are. We're not really ambulatory in the same way. 46% felt isolated when working from home during COVID. So maybe we're connecting with people online, but what are those connections like, and how can we kind of amp up that quality and foster that authentic engagement and connectivity? And then the last is that 36% were concerned about the long-term effects on their mental health. And so we see all of these kind of work from home aspects culminating around some very serious concerns about how can we shift our habits to flourish. And so from all of this, we see that there is an opportunity to rethink how we do work, to rethink things like when we're being plugged in for work, are we being the most productive we can be? When we're taking a break, whether that be, scrolling on Instagram, walking outside. Is that break effectively recharging us? And so some of the research we found was that 75% of employees want to continue working from home past the pandemic. And so there have been a lot of really incredible things that have come out of working from home. 77% of remote employees say that they're more productive when working from home. And remote workers are 3.2 times more likely to be more productive if they feel satisfied with their social connectivity, which we were just talking about. And so we have a whole chapter in the ebook on how we can foster authentic engagement and connection. And so all of this is to say that there is a need to train workers in digital wellness practices. So we have 83% of employees looking to their employers for guidance. We have many employers feeling ill-equipped to deal with these new pressures. They're not really sure where to start. And so we created this handbook and this playbook because digital wellness is no longer a luxury. It is a business and lifestyle necessity. And so being okay is something that we all need to take very seriously. And beyond being okay, we want to be the best versions of ourselves at work, at home, and in all of our different social spheres. And so for those of you who aren't acquainted with the traditional definition, digital wellness is basically referring to the optimum state of health and well-being that each individual using technology is capable of achieving. And the unique approach of the Digital Wellness Institute and Collective is referred to as digital flourishing. And so this is really just an empowerment-oriented way of looking at our technology use that's healthy tech, not anti-tech, that helps us enjoy technology while avoiding some of those associated harms like tech neck and eye strain and all of those things. And so this is the digital flourishing wheel that we created. And so essentially, when we're talking about digital wellness, I think the good news that I love to remind people of is that wellness is not a new concept. We're simply talking about what does wellness look like in this digital age. And so when we were researching and exploring all of the different domains that wellness and digital life touched, these were the main categories that we came up with. And we find that this piece can be a very kind of orienting and grounding visual for people who say, oh my gosh, digital wellness, it's so big. Where do I start? And so some people, some teams are going to want to focus more specifically on different aspects of this digital flourishing wheel than others. And so this next graphic provides a more detailed breakdown where we can just kind of delve into what some of these look like. And we're also going to attach this for you in the chat. I know it can be a little bit tough to see, but we have things like productivity. And so how can we really enhance our focus? We have things like environment. How can we set up our physical workspace to actually support physical, emotional, and mental health? Are we getting enough light? Are we next to a window? Are we making sure to reduce that inbox clutter? Because change also starts from within as well as all of the external factors. And then we have things like communication. How are we writing emails? Are we writing emails that are clear? For every email that's sent, at least 3 more emails are generated. We have things like relationships, looking at that quality time and connection, mental health, of course, physical health, which has to do with ergonomics, tech neck, eye strain. And so those are just a few areas of the digital flourishing wheel. And quantified self and digital citizenship are also really important to us because how we interact online in our digital footprint is also integral to understanding our digital identity and how we're interacting in the world. Sometimes people ask us, is digital wellness the same thing as tech-enabled health? And so we created this area of the wheel called quantified self, where we really do look at tech-enabled health in terms of how can we utilize different solutions. Many of you, have a Fitbit or something similar, so that we can also be, really harnessing everything that technology has to offer and translating it into productive and concrete things that can positively impact our mental and physical health. And so that's just a quick overview of the wheel. Every area of the wheel also represents 1 week of the course, for those of you who have asked that question. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back over to Amy to talk a little bit about positive digital culture and boundaries.
So a lot of times when I'm speaking to individuals or employees, they feel very frustrated that even though they want to bring digital wellness into their lives, they feel like there are outside factors that are preventing them from having the agency to deal with the distractions in their environment. Maybe their employer keeps coming to text them or email them. Maybe there are family members who are interrupting their workflow. Maybe the doorbell keeps ringing or the dog keeps barking. Whatever it might be, it feels as though we're sort of tied to distraction in our lives. And what I've discovered from my research is that, in fact, sometimes we invite distraction into our lives, and we have to take control of what factors we do have and embrace that sense of agency to do what we can do, not what we can't do. And so to that end, the ebook, in many ways that we've been referencing, is presents 6 different strategies that you can begin to use in your life. Particularly if you're a leader, there are 3 strategies specific to employees and 3 strategies specific to teams. This could also be the equivalent of individuals versus groups or individuals versus your family. But the idea is that these are exercises, strategies, laced with information and research that is within the last 1 to 2 years that can really help you inform and elevate your understanding of what digital wellness means and how you can create it for yourself. And so we're going to share the ebook at the end of this session. I just discovered a minute ago that I can't show the presentation and attach for you at the same time. So at the end of the session, I'll make sure to send out the ebook as well as that digital flourishing wheel. Or perhaps Nina, you can help me out with that from your end as well. But this is the sneak peek of what the ebook looks like in the meantime. And you'll see in the middle of the page that there are 2 sections, the playbook for employees and the playbook for teams. There's a total of 6 strategies that we chose to include in here. There's so many more that we include in the Digital Wellness Certificate program, but we have 10 weeks to cover that, and we only have a short bit of time to cover a few things today. So this is just scratching the surface about what we can do to help you to develop a more positive digital culture. And in fact, I'm only even going to touch on 4 of them today so that we can really delve into each one of them a bit more. So one of the first strategies that's mentioned for employees or for individuals starts with this concept of grounding yourself. What does it mean to ground yourself? And this concept of grounding, I think about when you think about a 3-prong outlet that you put your laptop into, or anything that has 3 little prongs on an electrical outlet. That 3rd grounding wire is actually used to help channel the flow of energy. And without that, your energy source is a bit unstable. You can get things done, but you're not your most grounded self. And I feel like that is where so many of us actually lie on a regular basis, that without grounding ourselves, even on a daily basis, to set our intention, to think about how we're going to show up online or at work or in our communication with friends and family, that we don't actually have anything directing us throughout the day. And so one of the exercises that I really like to encourage people to try is to write down your top 5 values. And in the ebook, you'll see a place for this that you can actually jot down on your own notes or print it out for yourself, but you can also just do it on a scratch sheet of paper to write down your top 5 values, whether that's friends, family, work, productivity, success, money, whatever it might be, that are your values. Write them down and rank them, top 5. And then the next step is to go into your phone and to look at your settings to determine what are the 5 apps that you use most frequently. Now, of course, this is not a perfect system. Sometimes we use the laptop, sometimes we do other things outside of our screen time, but it's an interesting exercise to go and align what you're doing online with your values. So if you're on an iPhone, you can go to settings and then you go to screen time. And if you are on an Android phone, you go to your settings, digital wellness. And in there, you can find out how much time you spend in each one of your apps. So you can actually even record that on the right side of your screen here. And what we're looking for is any kind of mismatch. If you find that you are misaligned between your top values and the top 5 apps that you've been using, maybe it's an opportunity to cut down on some of the apps that are distracting you from doing the things that you want to do. Maybe it means deleting the app for a week or two until you retrain yourself, or maybe it's just setting a new goal that instead of spending 30 minutes on Instagram, maybe you're going to only spend 10 minutes. One of the things that my husband started this year in 2021 was, he said, I'm not going to look at my phone until I get out of bed. We have this horrible habit of checking the news when you first wake up in the morning while you're laying there and kind of sleepily waking up, but instead really taking that time to say, no, I'm going to start my day with an intention right off the bat. I'm going to put it aside until after I wake up, have my cup of coffee, and then get into some of the work and news related items. That for him was a aligning of his values that he recognized was mismatched. And it's such an important place to start this conversation. Another wonderful way to ground yourself is to take stock of where your digital wellness is at right now. Now, in the past, there have been some wonderful clinical scales or research-based scales to help you assess whether or not you have whether you have nomophobia or whether you're spending too much time on social media. But there hasn't been anything really looking at the positives of how good does your digital wellness feel to you. And so we actually worked with a team of researchers in both the US and Canada to come up with this new survey that's currently getting scientifically validated. It's called the Digital Flourishing Survey. And it's very simple, takes about 5 minutes to complete, but it'll kick out a score that says, you're either doing, pretty good, or you could be doing better, or you need to work on this particular area. And what I love is that the assessment is actually coded to match the digital flourishing wheel that Nina shared with you, so that you can look at maybe one aspect of wellness that might be out of sync with the other aspects of digital wellness. What we're looking for is a holistic sense of balance, and knowing that if your productivity is doing really well, but your relationships aren't, maybe you need to beef up the way that you're focusing on digital wellness around relationships, or maybe that's one area that you want to go a little bit deeper into. So I recommend the Digital Flourishing Survey as a wonderful way to get a baseline for where you're at, and then to do a pulse point throughout the next couple of weeks to see, are your behaviors doing anything? I love data in the sense that it can help us to become a best version of ourselves. And without that kind of information, you don't know where you're at. So do yourself a favor, give yourself a chance to check in there. The second strategy for teams is to actually create a habitat for happiness. This is a concept I started developing in my book, The Future of Happiness, a few years ago, and it's become something that's evolved as I've gotten more involved with the Digital Wellness Collective and the Digital Wellness Institute, as I've learned from so many of my colleagues about amazing ways to create habitats for happiness. And so Nina wound up helping me to create this beautiful acronym here called CLEAR. And they're strategies for ways that you can eliminate distraction from your environment and create a positive culture around you that is nourishing of your wellness overall. You'll see things like C for clear your desk and your inbox, or L for lifting your computer to avoid tech tension, getting your ergonomics right. E for eliminating distractions, like turning off your notifications, or getting your phone out of your line of sight so that it won't distract you. A for activating a dedicated workspace in your home. So simply creating boundaries for yourself that not only help you to create boundaries to stay focused with work, but it also helps other people know where your boundary line is. R for refreshing your office by adding a plant or doing something that helps you to savor why you're working. Why are you connected to your mission? Is it your children? Is it your pets? Is it your loved ones? Is it the world? Is there something that is your goal? Put it in your environment so you remember what you're working towards, and creating a habitat for happiness. The third strategy for individuals is to optimize your habits. And thanks to Jeanette Manger for this, who has been working with us for quite some time and has been focusing on this idea of how do you create good habits and how do you break bad habits. So when we were looking at those value systems, you're looking at how you can align your values and your habits a little bit better. Some of the things you can do are making your bad habits just a little bit harder, making your good habits just a little bit easier. This could be simply if you are stuck watching television too often, or you've been binging Netflix, it could be as simple as taking the batteries out of your remote and putting them on the other side of the room, so that the next time you want to watch Netflix, All you have to do is go get your batteries and put them in the remote. But it's one extra step that mentally your brain thinks, oh my goodness, I have to go do that. I'm going to do something that's a little bit easier. And you replace that with a very simple habit, something that you want to be moving into. If it's journaling, put a journal beside your bedside table. If it's learning a new instrument, make sure your instrument is reachable. Or if you want to do art, make sure your art is within reach. So you're trading out here. Another wonderful habit from James Clear from Atomic Habits is the idea of stacking habits. So if you have a new habit you want to build on, like a positive habit of gratitude that's going to help you to frame the course of your day, to tie that into a habit that you already have. For me, that's drinking coffee. I love coffee in the morning. I know I'm going to have my coffee. So I made a new habit that every time I go for a cup of coffee, I have to say 3 things I'm grateful for. These are just simple ways of starting with small micro behaviors to create a ripple effect of positive change throughout our lives. And one of the most powerful ideas I've seen, Nina actually developed as well, and it's this idea of a flexible routine. So when you are in back-to-back Zoom meetings, you find yourself constantly having to be on the screen, managing the distractions in the background, managing how you look, managing the number of people on the screen. We know it can be exhausting and tiring. The Zoom fatigue effect is real. So what we encourage you to do is to plan out a flexible routine schedule. If you have a short break versus a medium break versus a long break, what are some activities that are fulfilling for you? Because when your brain is tired, that's not the time to come up with something new to help you be untired. You want to already have this brainstormed so that you can put it beside your desk in your office and you can say, okay, I've got 15 minutes. Let me look at my list. Okay, I'm going to go have an unplugged moment to have a cup of tea. Or I have a 15-minute break. Maybe I'm going to go stretch or work on a puzzle, or I'm going to go journal. And so you can begin to slot in ways to rejuvenate yourself throughout the day as a way to get offline so that when you go back to being online, you're less irritable, you're more motivated, you're energetic, and you're engaged with what you're doing. One more habit I'm going to share with you, and I told you this was just packed with information, and I'm only skimming the surface of the ebook, so I do hope you delve into it a little bit more. But this is an idea that is specifically aimed at small teams. It could be a family, or it could be a group, it could be a team. The idea is that you are trying to find a way to communicate better with those people who are in your immediate environment or that you work with on a regular basis. What we've learned from digital wellness is that individuals tend to get disgruntled when there's a miscommunication about how they want to communicate. And what's interesting to me is that if you live in a different region of the world, if you are in a different industry, and if you're a different age, you have different expectations of how soon somebody should respond to you. So if you are in Gen Z and you're in finance and you live in New York, you might expect everybody to respond to you within 15 minutes. And if they don't, it might be a bit of an affront. However, if you're in the Midwest of the United States and you're in nonprofits and you are a boomer, you might actually assume that there is up to a week or maybe a couple days at least to respond to emails, and that would be considered being responsive. But there's a miscommunication between regions and industries and age groups about what's appropriate. So what I like to do with teams is to actually just have that conversation, to literally write out all the different team members, get them into one place, whether that's in a Zoom circle or it's in a living room or your kitchen table, and actually talk to one another about what are your values, what are your digital boundaries, what's your preferred method of communication. If it's something urgent, is it a text or is it a phone call? If it's something that's just an FYI, is it an email or is it something that you just tell each other when you see each other next time? What are the ways that you communicate, and how can you cut down on some of those frustrations by beginning to create an accountability system for one another and just clarity about what times and when and how you want to chat. I know Common Sense Media has a wonderful version of this communication charter that's specific for families. So if you're looking for something that is good for asking children in your environment for how to communicate better, you might check out Common Sense Media. But this one has just been transformational for the groups that we've worked with to think through, how am I going to communicate? How can we do so knowing we have so many different ways of communicating these days, whether it's Slack or text or phone or email or calling, there's too many options. So let's make it simple and eliminate some of that frustration. So in other words, we want to just kind of recap for you that if you are interested in going a little bit deeper, there's a lot more information than is just in this ebook. Nina, I want to turn it back over to you to talk about a couple of the ways that you can begin to deepen your learning in digital wellness. I think you're on mute again. There we go.
Absolutely. And so there is a lot that can be done in this arena, but we like to say that there are a lot of different ways to create change. And so you can start on the personal level. You can also try and start, with your team leaders. Everyone's going to be receptive to different things, which is also why we created the ebook, because sometimes it's easier to say, hey, boss, here's an ebook with some tips. Do you want to talk about this? Like, do you want to kind of bring some of this into our next team meeting versus creating everything from scratch? And so we have the ebook. We want you to utilize that digital flourishing survey. You have an option to send a copy of your results to yourself. You can forward it to other people on your team to get a conversation going and to really just support employees, your teams, however you can, with these kind of intentions around are we using technology in a way that fuels versus fatigues us? And what do the logistics of that look like, especially as we enter 2021 and we always have an opportunity every day, regardless of it's the new year, to create new habits. And so these are just a few of the things that you can do. And so to get you further involved, we do have a 10-week digital wellness certificate program. Our next cohort starts on January 11th. It's a really incredible group of people. We have folks enrolled who are educators, teachers, clinicians. We have some people enrolled from the Air Force. We have some people enrolled from online marketing companies. Everyone's going to use this information differently, but it's all about how can we exist in the healthiest way in the world. And so this is just a graphic that shows a few kind of categories of people who typically enroll, but it is by no means limited to this list. We've also had yoga teachers enroll, holistic health educators. We keep expanding this list because the education is really applicable for anyone who is using technology on a regular basis and is having any kind of struggle with it affecting their mental health or physical health. And so that is just one of the things you can do. You can visit digitalwellnessinstitute.com. We have a 21% off code to honor the new year. If you have any questions about the program, you can just let us know. There's also a really great testimonial video on there. And we have other ways that you can get involved in this work that are completely free. And so the ebook being one of them, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in here. So this is the link to download the ebook that just went live about an hour ago. And so we hope that's helpful. You can spread it around to your communities. We have another great website that is digitalwellnessday.com that has a free kind of event planning toolkit. If you're interested in holding a conversation or event at your organization, that's another really, really great resource. And so that is basically what we have to cover today. We wanted to leave some extra time for you all to ask questions, to troubleshoot, to talk about how do we really start these conversations with our teams, with our families? What does all of that look like? And so I'm going to take a look at the chat now, but please do use the Q&A box. And thank you for your support of the program. We appreciate it. So does anybody have any questions? Anything that they feel like they're really ready to change, they're ready to embark upon? We can refer you to a specific chapter. We know tons of resources internationally. Yes, Terry, please do ask your question. Could you type it into the Q&A box for us? Let's see. There we go. Okay. Someone else today asked about policy ideas for digital wellness. And so Johnette, who is incredible on our team, she's a professor at Louisiana Tech. She is actually our kind of policy expert. And so the Digital Wellness Institute and Collective, we really focus mostly on consumers and kind of the individual, but some really great resources for policy work include the film The Social Dilemma, who's one of our impact partners, and also the Center for Humane Technology. They're doing some really hard work on getting these conversations in front of the kind of change makers who can actually affect the way that things will be moving forward. And so Section 230, for those who haven't looked it up, definitely worth brushing up a little bit. And yes, there is a lot of policy resources out there. And this other question about how did we get into this work? Amy, do you want to start first and I can answer after?
Sure. Such an interesting question. I got into this work actually through the field of positive psychology. I was doing a lot of speaking to audiences all over the globe, and I like to do a lot of listening. I think it's a really important skill as a speaker. And so I had been listening to audiences talk for years, literally, about their top concerns, which when I started was 2007, and all the concerns were related to economics and the recession and the uncertainty of the future. And then as times changed, I noticed in about 2015 that the questions had started turning more and more to uncertainty around our technological future. And so I did a lot of research into the intersection between happiness and technology. And my thought was that technology would make us less happy. And what I actually discovered in my research was that technology, while it can do many things, it can't actually make us happy or less happy. It can aid us in ways that we seek happiness. But I was really fascinated that there was another way to approach technology in a more mindful way. And that if we use technology with full intention and give attention to our intention, that then we can begin to create a more positive world, the kind of world that I wanted to live in. And I wound up seeking out other individuals like me who are researching this and discovered the what has now become the Digital Wellness Collective, which is part of this larger ecosystem you keep hearing about, of the Collective, which is a trade association, the Institute, which is our education arm, and Digital Wellness Day, which is the broader public exposure and awareness building around digital wellness. And so that's been a very short summary of my trajectory, but one that's been incredibly meaningful.
Yes, and I had the pleasure of meeting Amy, I think almost 3 years ago, when we were just forming the collective. And so just a really quick kind of note on the collective. The collective is our digital wellness trade association. It is international. And so if anybody has an active offering that is specific to digital wellness with a public facing website and intervention, they are eligible to join. And so we have over 100 companies internationally involved. We have people who focus, just on how does technology affect intimacy? How does technology affect productivity? We have people who run offline camps. There's kind of all different, and we think of digital wellness as this spectrum. And so while a digital detox is lovely, it's not necessarily sustainable. And so our goal with this ebook is also to give you those sustainable strategies. In terms of how I got into this work, I came through a kind of different path actually through my childhood. So I had a really hard time speaking growing up, and I've been in speech therapy since I was about 4. And I noticed when I was trying to talk to people that eye contact was how I let them know I was trying to communicate. And there was such a drop off in eye contact that sometimes people wouldn't even know I was trying to talk to them. And I was like a little bit horrified and a little bit kind of captivated by what I was seeing. And so all of that really informed my professional career. So I went to school for clinical social work, and I really created an individualized track that looked at the norms of connectivity and how the shifting norms of connectivity are changing human development. And so I think one of the beautiful things about the collective and all of the people in this field is that everyone's going to have a different entry point, a different kind of portal into this world. Sometimes those experiences can be traumatic or heavy, but I think that's just all the more reason to really talk about them and hold space for each other and focus on the solutions. So thank you so much for asking about our background. That is what fuels us every day, and each of you, in seeing your interest and seeing this need.
Wonderful. Nina, I know you've been talking, so I've been kind of reading through some of the questions that are coming in through here on the chat. I want to go back to Terry's question. She mentioned that she's starting digital wellness programming for a big company. And one of the things that they are very familiar with is all of the physical side of digital wellness, but are less familiar with some of the mental health, relationships, communication, softer skills that are also really important for digital wellness. And so I think she's looking for some ideas about tangible things to work on, specifically around those topics. And I have a few ideas, but Nina, do you want to share as well?
Sure. Yeah. So on the mental health front, there are a few things that we traditionally look at. We look at kind of self-care and what are people's breaks shaping up to be. We also look at kind of the positive emotion that can come with technology. So our research director is also a positive media psychologist. And I think that there's a lot of really incredible research out there that is truly healthy tech versus anti-tech. And I think that anytime we're creating programming, we want to make sure that we incorporate that research as well, because there are so many joyous things that technology can bring us when used correctly. And just like we kind of talk about how screen time is not a unitary kind of activity, because your phone is also a computer. So it's not like you're just going to check your email, you're just going to, check something. There's a really great graphic. I don't know if they've created one for 2021 yet, but it was called the 2020 Internet Minute. And it just shows, like, when someone goes to check their phone, for example, here are all of the different kind of directions that we're often pulled that can fragment our attention. And so along the lines of kind of self-care and breaks, I would encourage you to look at when we're online, when someone's online on any device, is the use intentional, or is it kind of passive to zone out? And that will also kind of help reveal whether or not someone is truly feeling recharged after a break. But there's a lot more I could cover. Amy, what are some of your top tips?
Well, I was just going to say that when I'm working with big companies, one of the things that I find to be incredibly helpful is to have statistics, particularly when we're talking about softer skills or more squishy ideas. I think that time is in our favor right now, because the numbers around mental health in the workplace are staggering, and it's something that is almost impossible to ignore. It's something we have to address. And most workplaces don't have any idea about how to go there beyond in a really scalable fashion, with providing real support, not just something that's kind of a rubber stamp. And so those individuals who are able to share some really tactical tips and resources, I think will be more likely to be heard this year. But I also am trying to keep my ear to the ground for new research. And one of the studies that I found just this morning that I'll pop into the chat here in a minute was that the biggest work from home challenges right now, 59% of people say home distractions, 45% staying motivated, and 37% around communication. And to me, two of the three of those, and arguably all three, are definitely on the softer side of skills that are impacting productivity. And so when we lead with stats like that, it's really important that employers recognize this impacts not only the bottom line, but employee retention and burnout rates, and the ability for employees to feel like they're capable of doing the tasks that they're given to them. So I think there's a really strong case for that right now. And along with that, I think Elif had a question in the chat as well around disabilities in the pandemic, and specifically newly emerging diagnoses that are coming out of the pandemic. I don't know of specific accommodations being made in employers' offices right now, but I do know stats around text neck and chronic back pain and feelings of fatigue that are emerging that have been really, really strong indicators that there's something going on around physical need for accommodation. And in particular, if nothing else, two things. One would be the ability to have a flexible workspace, whether that's standing versus sitting, or whether it's the ability to move around within your environment. And the second thing is taking breaks in between Zoom calls, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes, but instead of making calls back to back on the hour like we're so used to doing, is actually making gap spaces there, because we know that the attention span is limited. We know that our ability to really engage will go down with the number of hours that we're spending online. Those two things are very clear for me. Other ones I don't know, and if anyone else in the chat knows of things, then I would love to hear your expertise as well. Nina, have you heard anything else that might be disability related? I think you're on mute again.
I think that's actually most of it. Today's my first day getting back into the flow of mute and all the Zoom experiences. I think that is most of what I've heard also. There are a lot of incredible features that are kind of integrated into computers now that people don't know about. So I know that wasn't your exact question, but even for example, like there's a way to create a custom command. So you could highlight text. And I think for me, I have it programmed as Command L, and you can just listen. And so if you don't want to read something, you can just listen. And so there are kind of digital wellness disability features built into platforms now. And I know that there are going to be an increasing number of those. But yes, I think that that is definitely something that needs to be talked about a lot more. Let's take a look at a few more questions here. And I'm just going to pop the registration link and the promo code into the chat. I got a few private messages. So if anybody has questions about that, just let us know. But it looks like we have a question from Denise and Vijay. So Denise was asking about this idea of flourishing post-pandemic, and like how are we going to help people to kind of revert from tech use once we can actually meet face-to-face. And I think that this is a really complex question because a lot of people are going to continue and even prefer online interactions because it's going to limit the amount that they have to fly and the exposure to germs. And we don't really know how long COVID is going to go on, even with the vaccine. And so I think that this is going to be a really personal answer for people. But I also think that once COVID is officially over, people are going to be craving that completely unplugged digital detox experience. And so it will really be up to the educators and the leaders to kind of offer this permission-based language around like, hey, now we can go outside, let's actually do it. And of course, we want to be careful. We want to be careful how we're advising people, but that's going to look very different across cultures and countries. And even, you know, in the US, like right now we're in Colorado and we're not allowed to eat inside anywhere, but in Florida, things seem to be almost entirely open, and that keeps changing too. And so I think that it's really going to have to do with education, and I am hopeful that people are going to want to enroll in offline retreats and programs to help recalibrate their text usage when it is appropriate. And until then, we're just going to do the best that we can to maintain health while being plugged in more than ever before.
I actually think too, Nina, that this is a rare opportunity we have. We have this moment in time where we can shape the narrative that's going to come after this. And those of us who are actively out there trying to influence what's going on, whether on a policy level or an organizational level, I think can speak to the fact that there is between now and the time when the world kind of reopens, there's a time to set a precedent for what the world's going to look like after. And the more that we can get into policy, whether that's government policy or organizational policy, the longer lasting the effect will be. So if you have the opportunity to sway what's going on in your environment, we want to support you, we want to encourage you. I know in Europe, they've made great strides with the right to disconnect, which gives employees the opportunity to step away during vacation without any sort of penalty on their work and to have a little bit more breathing space. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could find more types of legislation that helps to create digital wellness for organizations that is long lasting past COVID? Maybe COVID is our opportunity to have an entry point to these conversations there. So I really want to encourage that, and just focus in a little bit more about if we have a 6-month window, what do we need to do now to make that happen?
Absolutely. And I just added a little bit of information on the right to disconnect for those who aren't familiar with it. We have a question from VJ. Can we create on the ebook a high school level course as an elective or a required course? So I'm not sure what your exact question is, VJ, but Johnette is teaching the first digital wellness course at Louisiana Tech, and she is going to use the ebook as just, a short required reading for her students. So if that's something that's interesting to you, we would welcome you to use it.
I also saw a question from Terry a little bit further back about social media and diversity. I'm trying to scroll to where that was in the chat here. She said, I'm very interested in the divisiveness that social media brings between many different ethnicities and political differences in employees and our customers, and that trying to combine that sense of diversity and inclusion with what's going on in digital wellness. And I think it's interesting. This sounds like a sales pitch for the course, but honestly, there's an entire week devoted specifically to looking at diversity and inclusion that goes deep. It is about 8 sessions long. It explores and looks at the history of what's happening with racism around the world and how that impacts what's going on with digital wellness. There's a lot there, as well as the idea of how do you create policy that does support inclusion. And one of the things that I think is interesting is that as much as we want to create standards for digital wellness, one of the things we've heard loud and clear from individuals is that freedom of choice is also equally important to fostering inclusion. So some people like being able to work in the evenings when their kids are in bed. Some people like being able to work during their lunch break when they can actually think. And so trying to figure out what does that look like might actually be a very personal thing, but to have that conversation, I think having the conversation around what it looks like to create a diverse and inclusive environment for a specific team or a specific environment can be a really healthy exercise to explore. So I know that's kind of putting the question off, but I think there's so much more there. Mina, I don't know if there's anything quick that you could add in about that, but I'm conscious that we only have about 7 minutes and quite a few other questions.
Yeah, so I think tying into that is another question we have from Sherry. And so what we did with the certificate course in terms of teachers is we are not your only 2 teachers by any means. We gathered all of the experts from all of the corners of the world. And the course is pre-recorded, but the content is released once a week so we can learn together. And then there's 1 optional live call per week. So we actually have now almost 20 teachers who are the experts. Like we have an optometrist who's actually joining the course, who's going to be teaching about eye health. We have a chiropractor talking about ergonomics. We have some addictions experts. We have nutritionists. We really wanted to bring you the top talent so that you didn't have to go searching, so that it was all in one place. So you will have about 20 teachers, and those are all listed on the website. Yeah. Any other kind of troubleshooting related questions? Thank you. Thank you so much.
There's been so many good questions, and
I know I'm just scrolling back to make sure that we don't miss anything. So we are going to send out this recording to everyone. I'm going to pop the ebook link into the chat one more time. You can use this however you like. So once you've downloaded it, you can share it with your communities. You can share it really wherever you like in a way that is helpful for you. So you don't have to ask us for permission whatsoever. We just wanted to create a free resource for you all to kick off this new year and just start having those conversations with your teams. I think also worth mentioning is that we don't just have the certificate program. We can hold a lunch and learn 1 hour type of program on any area of the flourishing wheel or cover a few. It's really just about what is going to kind of ignite that interest in your organization, in your workplace at this time. The Digital Wellness Day Toolkit, which is also free, has a ton of information that's a little bit more, I think, age inclusive on like different activities that you can do offline, especially if you are looking to change habits. Having that replacement activity to set yourself up for success is so important. And so that's another really wonderful resource. I saw somebody talking about the Children's Screen Time Action Network. It's a really great group, a little bit different than Common Sense Media. The Children's Screen Action Time Network is really about looking at like the ads on TV and how we can support parents specifically with all types of tools. So they have a really incredible network and executive director, and they do some great policy work. And so by joining us today, I hope that you were able to get a few tips that you can bring back. We encourage you to try something. You don't have to start with everything. Maybe just pick 1 or 2 habits in there and give them a shot. We also recommend trying something with a friend, having that kind of collective accountability, team spirit, support system, whatever you can do to set yourself up for success. Amy, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Oh, I just thought I would add to, in the ebook download link, I just wanted to highlight that it takes you to a website called Wiley Beyond. And because we're all about digital wellness, we wanted to be really clear, the Wiley Beyond is actually our co-author on this ebook, and they were wonderful partners in helping to create the document and make space. They are providers of online educational programs, and by signing up for the ebook, you can either click that you want to receive information from them or that you don't. I think it's defaulted that you don't, so you won't get harassed unless you want to be. But I just wanted to let you know why it was going to Wiley Beyond. They are incredible at providing sources and solutions for big corporations who are looking for ideas for how to bring digital wellness to their communities. So that being said, I think that's it from my end, Nina. I'm just so grateful for everyone who made the time and space to come today. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you all. And I'm just going to type our email addresses in here. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. So my primary email address is nina@digitalwellnesscollective.com, and Amy's is the Institute. Typing under pressure is not one of my specialties. Here we go. Okay. And so I just want to thank all of you for showing up today, because I know that it's kind of the first day back to work, and the fact that you actually made time for this is huge in terms of a step towards digital wellness. So kudos to each and every one of you just for showing up, and we would love to support you however we can moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Happy New Year.